let's move on now to a segment which we all love to hate. It's called What Else Have You Been Watching? Can I ask a question, Simon? And excuse me if this is a bit sort of forward and a little bit presumptuous, but what else have you
Sure.
been watching?
It's a hell of a question. I'm glad you asked. No, it's not presumptuous at all. I, you and I are fans of the director John McTiernan, aren't we? You are, I think.
Uh,
You are, aren't you?
yeah, I mean, yeah,
He's
obviously.
done good work.
Yeah,
For those of
yeah.
you who don't know him by name, you will know that he is the man behind Die Hard, the great Bruce Willis action film. He's probably got a couple of dead set classics to his name: Die Hard, Predator. Maybe put Hunt for Red October in there. He's
Can we also
also got.
drop in Die Hard with a Vengeance?
We can, if you like. I don't think that's the best one of them, but it
It's
shows
the
that he was
second best one
back
of them.
doing what he does. Yeah, that's true. It is. Um, he also has a couple of unmitigated disasters to his name, both Rollerball, the was it Chris Klein? Who was that terrible actor from the American Pie movie? You came
Yeah, it
and
was
went
Chris
very
Klein.
quickly. Chris Klein, yeah, and Ice Cube and Rebecca Romaine, not Ice Cube, Ice Bucket. I can't remember who it was. Rebecca Romaine. But yeah, Rollerball was terrible and cost a lot of money. He made a really interesting film with Sean Connery called Medicine Man.
If you say interesting, I'd say
Which,
terrible, but sure.
well, I didn't mind. That's one that I've gone back to a couple of times and watched, and I could see that it had a little bit of ambition. They were trying to make sort of a environmental drama within the sort of framework
Simon,
of a blockbuster film.
sorry, I just brought up his Wikipedia so I could try to get a bit more of a full encompassing sort of view of it. And I was thinking about the fact that he he directed Predator and then Die Hard like back to back in,
Yep.
87 and 88. Okay. And I thought, that's pretty impressive. And then
Yeah.
you look later in his career and he ended up directing Medicine Man, followed by, oh gosh, what was the next thing? Last Action Hero back to back as well. So,
Well, I love Last Action Hero, but it was a huge flop. So yes,
it's also
I gather.
terrible.
No, it's not terrible. We're going to have an
It is
argument about
terrible.
Last Action Hero one day. It is an underappreciated gem of a satire, which we'll get around to. It's got some great action in it. But what I watched of his was arguably his biggest flop. Now we did an intermission a couple of weeks back. 1999, the great films of 1999. What we didn't mention, I don't think we mentioned, was The 13th Warrior, which holds the ignominious title of the most expensive flop of the year 1999. Close to $200 million in 1999 dollars. It had a worldwide gross of 61 million. And it was a real dog of a box office performer. It's a Nordic Viking type story in which a Muslim attaché played by Antonio Banderas joins a Viking fleet, a Nordic warrior fleet, to fight a what starts out as a mystical bunch of protagonists or antagonists turns into just some cave dwellers who they have to sort of travel deep down into the caves to bump off. A huge production. It looks huge in parts. It's largely nonsensical. I couldn't quite figure out what was going on, but it's got a beautiful widescreen transfer on Netflix. So it's an amazing film to look at. The 13th Warrior, it's hard to imagine an American blockbuster that would have a Muslim hero in it. In 1999, even then, pre 9/11, it was a challenge for them for a big studio to have a Muslim lead or Muslim character lead. Antonio Banderas is, of course, Spanish, but that comes with its own set of problems. Odd film, compelling film in parts, certainly indulgent, a massive folly, which is the kind of movie that's come up in the past here. But if you want to see something that you probably won't ever see again, A, because of the cost, and B, because McTiernan, who actually went to jail for a while there as part of I think it was a wiretapping incident. Check out The 13th Warrior.
Yeah, sure.
What else have
Simon,
you been watching?
I've been delving into the deep library of some of my streaming services, and
Yeah.
of the two films that I've watched, actually I saw quite a few films this week, but I'll talk about two specifically. Harper, which is a 1966 private eye movie,
Wow.
stars one Paul Newman and Lauren Bacall.
Yes.
Uh, have you've seen this? I'm sure.
I saw this as I watched it on television with my parents many, many moons ago. Yes, I have seen. I went through a bit of a Paul Newman thing and watched Hud and watched Cool Hand Luke, and I put Harper in that mix as well. So yeah, I don't remember much of the film, but I have seen it.
Yeah, look, I'll say this about the movie. Really great first half, and then afterwards it just becomes just unwatchable. William Goldman's the problem with it is that it's a private detective film set in Los Angeles. And what I
Yeah.
thought was particularly striking as I was watching it is it's got such a really cool vibe around it to begin with. It's, swinging 60s. It's lots of really cool suits. It's, cool attitude. It's just kind of, it's just shot really nicely. Really, the colors of its pop. The cinematographer is Conrad Hall,
Oh wow,
just to,
Connie.
drop a name in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it sort of really sort of hews to sort of LA-noir, like in terms of like that sort of private detective sort of genre. So when you're thinking
Sure.
about things like, say, The Long Goodbye or any of these other sort of iconic films, like this absolutely
Point
deserves to be up
Point
there.
Blank.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, the problem is that when you sort of reach the midpoint, it just starts getting really, really convoluted and just interest wanes because I kind of feel like William Goldman just kind of lost track of how to present what was a fairly complicated crime story and actually have the entertainment value that the first half has. I will say that
Mm.
Jack Smite, who directed it, really brings like a lot of pop and sizzle to the first half of it. But yeah, it's great. Like, start watching that first half, and then if you just decide to go and make a sandwich, don't bother coming back to the lounge room. Just go off and enjoy your sandwich
Where
and
do
have
we
a great
watch
time.
this? How
Well,
how is this viewable?
I watched it on US Tubi.
Oh
So
wow. Okay.
you know, not easy to track down, probably, but I'm sure it's not too difficult to find either. Like, it's not an
I haven't done a
obscure movie.
Tubi deep dive in ages. That's one of my favorite things to do, a
Yeah.
Tubi deep dive.
The other thing
Um,
I watched this week is off the back of last week talking about Presumed Innocent.
hmm.
You might think that I went and watched the Harrison Ford movie Presumed Innocent, but
No.
why would I follow my logical, spirit animal that way? Instead, I chose to watch the Peter Weir movie, starring one Harrison Ford, Witness,
Wonderful.
which
Fantastic.
has Harrison Ford as a police officer going into an
Hey,
Amish
man.
township in Pennsylvania
They didn't
and
know there was a witness.
hiding out there for a
Tell me
bit.
about the eyewitness.
I remember
Yeah,
seeing this
Amish
when I was a
kid, 8 years
kid.
old.
It was one of
man
these
of
films where it
force.
came out in,
I'm a police
I say,
officer, man. I have to
1990.
talk to the
So
boy.
my parents must
A
have
woman
rented it out from
86.
You
VHS.
don't
Beyond,
understand.
that was
We have nothing to
well
do with
before
your laws.
1990. It was like 86.
Yes, I
sorry.
do. Your son's a material witness to
Well,
homicide.
certainly I watched it as
Worlds
a kid.
apart.
It
Oh,
may
Now
have
you're
I
a
been-
see.
witness.
You watched it in 1990, yes.
Yeah,
or
now
maybe
you're a
I think
witness.
it's probably later I watched it. But anyway, I certainly saw it when I was a
what's going
kid.
on, man? What is
And not
happening?
really old
You
enough to
said we
really
would be
appreciate
safe in
much at all what was
Philadelphia.
happening. But to my
with the
very
Amish
vague
woman, right?
memory, my
Like the
kid
family
memory,
from the
was
boy.
that he spends
You bring
most of
this
the
man
movie
to our
dressed in
house?
Irish outfits and
With his gun out to
doing
hand?
barn raising and stuff.
You bring
It's
fear to
actually
this
surprising
house?
to find how little of
One
it
has an
really
idea
is set
about you
barn
and the
raising.
Englishman.
I think for the first 55 minutes, it's basically just a cop drama in whatever cities in Philadelphia, maybe. I'm not too sure. I can't remember now. But it's just interesting that it's like such a heavy cop drama. The bad guy in it is played by Danny Glover, who's pre-Lethal Weapon. So yeah, that does place it in like 85, 86, because it was right before Lethal Weapon. But it's kind of
Yep.
fun watching in this because he's kind of a very Murtaugh type character until you realize he's actually a dirty cop, which Murtaugh would
Mm.
never. But anyway,
And
Witness,
and he
surprise.
and succumbs to a one of the more inventive spoiler
On-screen
alert
deaths.
passings in the film. Yeah.
Yeah, he gets murdered pretty interestingly by the end of the film. Yeah, but anyway, Witness surprisingly holds up very well. It's much quicker
Oh yeah.
paced than I'd really anticipated, and yeah, I think it holds up in a way that I really wasn't expecting. I thought I'd be turning this off after 15 minutes, and I was
Oh
glued.
god,
And
no.
I started watching late at night as well, which says something.
It's no, it's one of my favorite films. I think it's the film that Harrison Ford probably should have won the Oscar for. The other work he did with Peter Weir, Mosquito Coast, was also a really eccentric, really brave performance. In Peter Weir, Harrison Ford found a director that really suited his on-screen persona. I think Ford did some of his best work with with the Aussie director has just recently announced his retirement. Won't be making any more movies. So yeah, no, I think Witness is an absolute stunner. Good on you for watching it. Hey, you know what else I've been watching?
Mm.
There's a little show that has returned in season 2 after making a bit of a splash a couple of years ago, House of the Dragon. Now, this represents a little bit of an odd duck for me because I haven't seen a single episode of Game of Thrones, but I have really gravitated towards House of the Dragon. And it's a show that I find very easy to follow. And I know it's hard to say, but I always was frightened off a bit by all the machinations of Game of Thrones. But I know we've spoken about this previously on the podcast. House of Dragon has come back in season 2 with a cracking, after one of the great final moments of a season, a great cliffhanger in season 1. It's returned with a really smashing bit of television for the first episode of season 2. So I don't think it's going to win over any new fans, but it certainly appeases those that were hooked. It's come back after all this time, looking and feeling terrific. So if you love your dragon stories, and I know I do, House of the Dragon is back and very watchable.
I'm not sure what it is about this second season, but it really does feel like a lot of enthusiasm that people had for Game of Thrones generally. But I kind of think that House of the Dragon launched just after the Lord of the Rings show on Amazon, and people certainly embraced House of the Dragon in a really big way. Like the general narrative around that seems to be one of enthusiasm, and people were pleasantly surprised at how much they were enjoying it. But it just seems that with this new season, like it's just returned to a very indifferent viewership. Like I don't know if
I haven't seen any figures for it. I understand it was down, but
viewership definitely down for the second season return from where it was at with the first season. But yeah, just the general vibe and tenor I see of conversation around the place about it. Just people just don't seem excited by any means. And I certainly feel that myself. I'm going to sit down and probably watch this in a few weeks' time and then just sort of binge watch and catch up. But yeah, I don't know. There's just a lackluster vibe around it, which is maybe unfortunate.
Interesting, because the show itself actually delivers. Yeah, look, I must admit it hasn't lit up my socials in the way I thought it may have.
But like it also
the show itself certainly delivers.
Yeah, like the thing is, the show's back. Give it a couple of weeks, and it may be one of these things where people start getting back on board with it. And in a few weeks' time, you just see everybody really going nuts for it. But I mean, the challenge for them is, how do they cut through all the talk about the bear over the next week? That's where it's at.
Or our coverage of the bear, which peaked in our intermission segment, which you really should go back and watch if you haven't yet. Hey, let's move on to the House of Games, which you very cleverly call it when you send me the file through the week. Yeah, let's do it.